So I'm finally going to try to preview the course for Wednesday. It's the Gotham Grind, which isn't available in the regular routes here on regular riding, but it's pretty close to the Astoria 8. I think the Astoria 8 has a little loop at the bottom that's not in the Gotham Grind, so we'll be able to see most of the course for Wednesday. I say I'm pretty familiar with it. So right here already there's a little bit of a ramp. I don't think that's where the race actually starts, but if it does, we better be ready for that. So, but this loop is it's going to be a lot of ups and downs. No big hills, but just constant little ramps. So you just got to be ready to hurt a lot. It'll be interesting how some of the guys react to last week, because Martin sort of came out of the blue and beat some of the top guys in this series. And if they'll be trying to utilize some tactics to make sure it's not a sprint against him, or to drop him or tire him out so he doesn't have a big sprint left. But I think it's a good one. Good course for him, because he can, I think that he can handle punching big power over little hills. So, but the entire team has to learn to ride a little more efficiently. If your average power for the race is much higher than everyone else's around you, and you weren't trying to do breakaways all the time, then you're not riding efficiently. And it's tough to figure out how to do that. You got to ride pretty even power when you're in the bunch, and accelerate with the right amount of power over the hills and on the attacks, so that you don't get dropped, for one, of course, and that you don't overdo it and push yourself to the front of the group and then slide back. I think that's where you overdo the powers, when you're to the front and then to the back and to the front and to the back of the group, because you're sort of panicking at the back and overextending yourself back up to the front. But it's not that easy to figure out. And the ones who do it, those guys have done like 400 or 500 Zwift races. So for them, you just over time figure that out. But when you've only done 10, 20 races, it's still fairly new. Getting the feeling of this game. So now we're coming down a hill here. We'll let it cruise down. So I think the long stretches on the map on either side of that water, you got an uphill and then a downhill. About that, like between 4 and 8% for a couple 100 meters. And those are the longer climbs. And then it seems there's a lot of little shorter, punchy climbs, bumps on some of the other parts. It's 4 laps of the same course, so if you don't preview it, you'll have lots of chance to figure it out. Hopefully you don't get dropped on the first lap because you didn't know what it looked like. Okay, so I think back in here, this might still be on the Gotham Grind here. It's hard to tell. But I think we're going to loop this little section here to the right coming up, and that's not part of the Gotham Grind. So we don't hit any of that futuristic Highline part of New York. This is all on the typical Central Park roads. Yeah, see, now we're heading on a little section here that's not in the Gotham Grind. If my mapping skills are correct, it looks like there's a little hill in here. Maybe I'll pop my feather here. This little hill. Probably reduce my body weight to about 50 kilo for 15 seconds there. Okay, so that was that little loop. Now we're back on this straight. No, I was almost that little loop. That's the furthest view we have on that map. That was almost it. Still on that little extra loop. That's not part of the Gotham Grind. It's got some little hills in it. Okay, now we've joined the Gotham Grind part again. So that was a little loop just right to the right. We went to the right, that sort of loopy, snaky section. Now we'll head to the left, and this is the way the Gotham Grind goes at this section. And so again, we're on sort of the long section, sort of doing a perimeter of that water in the middle, and each section will have an uphill, longer uphill, not too steep, and then come back down, and then we do a loop at the top here, not further up here. So yeah, we're going up 4%. I do got some towels here stashed away. I need them. I'm not going to get too sweaty today. Still not 100%, but I hope I'm full power Wednesday. If not, then by Sunday. So yeah, still longer climb. That goes for a while here. Mostly up, probably to midpoint up here along the water. Then it will start to come down. Yeah, so now we're flattened out, basically. And we'll go moderately downhill here for a bit. Accelerate practice drafting off these guys on the way down. Ha! I was a little late. See that? It went up to 2% to 3%, and I let myself freewheel a little long and lost the wheel. So if you're gonna freewheel, you got to be ready to accelerate real quick as soon as the grade goes back up. And back down again. So here maybe a freewheel, a little, 9% downwards. Still 4%, 5%. Might get a little chance to recover. When it's a bigger percent, above 5%, then you can usually get a few seconds at least to freewheel or sit in. But if it's broken up and everyone's strung out, you're gonna have to keep riding hard right over the hill and through the bottom. And but it won't be as extreme as last week because there's more small hills. So last week you had that one massive or tough little hill each lap, and it was basically you raced up that hill and then sat in. So this part of the loop will also be on the Gotham Grind. I'm not sure if it's in this direction or not, but at least we're getting an idea on the caliber of the hills, where they are, so you know a little bit what to expect on the first lap. You got to remember that everybody knows when you're dropped in Zwift, you're dropped for good almost every time. So you really got to be switched on that first lap, because the guys are going to be shooting really hard to drop you. Okay, so there's a little bump here up to 8. So, real short little digger. Pretty cruisy in here now for a little bit. A little downhill here. Tiny little. Again, we don't do the skyline that goes in there. Stay on the regular roads here, which is nice. That skyline's got some pretty nasty hills in it. Hence the title Skyline. I wonder if those are actually the city plans for New York. Guess we might find out in 50 years. Probably are, actually. Where else would they get the idea from? Probably got the probably got them leaked out from the New York mayor for a big lump of money. Probably. Okay, so we're in this, still in this top little loop, a little punchy couple little punchy bumps. Here we're at 5% again, just for 100, 200 meters. Those bumps are going to feel bigger every time. So this cuts us back through this way, which must be how it goes, yeah. It's kind of like a figure eight, really. Ooh, got another feather. So here we'll hook to the left, back down the long straight. And there should be a longer climb on this side as well. Not long, a little longer than the other climbs. And here we go up it, yeah. That's not much more. I'm guessing this will be the finish as well. It's probably how it's going to go. So if you have a power up, if it starts just before that ring, better use it, because there are no power ups in. Another feather. Nice. No power ups in the SZR League, but if you have one at the start, you're allowed to use it until you pass the start finish banner. And you usually start just behind it, so you can nail that power up straight at the start. Or if it's a longer lead into the lap, you might have 5-10 kilometers to use your power up, and then that's it. Imagine the tactics using a power up if you're in the big leagues. Once you hit your power up, all your competitors can see that you're using it, because it will that little circle will go above your head. So if you're coming close to the last kilometer and you throw on an aero helmet, which gives you aerodynamic advantage, before you start, before you get away, then they'll know what you're trying to do. So, but I'm kind of glad that this series doesn't use them, because it just adds a little too much tactics for a beginner. So this goes along. We're down low and straight shot, so this stays pretty flat here. We had the little hill there at the beginning of this straight. Now it's really flat, so you can draft this section pretty good. It's actually nice for the start, because if the start's back of the start line, you have up to 8% for 100, 200 meters straight off the gun. But if you can really pump that, then you can sit in here, because it stays flat for a good kilometer, 2 kilometers. And then you get a little bit downhill here. Just let it roll, hitch on these guys, straight back into power. So you gotta remember, gotta be careful watching the percentage, because your trainer might have a slight delay before it recognizes your power. Just a minute. Hey. log into my bank ID. Wife's organizing the taxes. So, we've done a whole loop of the Gotham 8. I'm going to keep riding for a bit. Now we're back to that section. We'll hang a left here, and on the map, now on the map to the right, we're going to do that loop, not part of the Gotham 8, and then back into the to the left the second time. That will continue the loop. We'll go for another 10-15 minutes. Just check my pedaling efficiency today. Got my Wattbike app here. So I just ride and then start it. So that's going to show my pedaling efficiency in my sort of peanut power bar and my left to right leg. So I'm trying to follow my left to right leg because I've been up to 53-47 usually right leg power to left leg power, and trying to strengthen the left leg, work on my pelvic mobility, because I don't know if it's a pure power thing or if my pelvis is twisted and that limits the power I can use on my left leg. So I'm trying to even that out, but it's usually 52-48, 53-47, which is substantial. Pretty substantial amount of discrepancy between the legs. I got one leg longer than the other, so I've been dealing with these issues for a long time, and sometimes I get lower back and hip pain if I get too tight and I'm not doing enough core and hip flexor stretches. But I seem to improve it. My pedaling efficiency also seems a little down today. Usually around high 60s. I'm in the mid 60s. Some people say that score, the PES score, is not usable, but I think it's got to have some. I mean, if it's measuring the ups and downs in your pedal stroke, that's got to be fairly useful, at least to a certain degree. I mean, if you were in the 40s or you're in the 60s, 70s, that's got to be a pretty significant difference in wasted power. But I'm trying to read up a little more on it. One guy I know who says it's a bullshit number happens to have a really low one, and he's quite strong. So maybe he doesn't want to believe that he should improve his efficiency, and therefore just think that number is not relevant. But I don't know. It's never good to dwell, to focus on these secondary things, but I think it's useful to note them and then see if there's little things you can do: saddle position, core strength, flexibility, to improve. If you can improve those numbers, why not? You got them right there. I think the Garmin power meters have the same technology, some of the other ones as well, so yeah, why not use it? Yeah, so see, I'm 53-47 today as well. do some single leg drills as well. See if that helps, but it's not that simple. I'm going to try a bigger gear. Try a bigger gear for a bit and take a split. See if it gets worse. See, automatically the efficiency goes up. In the bigger gear. So I think riding in a smaller gear improves your efficiency, but you are more efficient in a big gear. I just went from 64 PES riding about 100, and now I'm riding 80. Increase the power a little bit too, of course, but now I'm riding 80 RPM, and I got 72 PES. It hasn't seemed to change my balance very much. Still the right leg's 53, left leg 47. But you can see the peanut is much smoother there. Maybe it's off now because I got one hand off the handlebar. That changes things a little. But it's much better in the bigger gear. Now that's the question. Does that mean, oops, I hit stop accidentally, so on here that affects the game. So somehow the power in the app is linked to power in the game. Interestingly, didn't even know that myself. So you can see here I stand up and it's pretty inefficient. Muscular, that's so in the pedals it's pretty inefficient to stand up. It goes red pretty quick. But for me, heart rate wise, what I save, I don't know, like it's not efficient in the numbers, but if I stand on a climb, it's pretty useful for me. I can hold, I really, like on Alpe d'Huez, I do a lot of standing. I'm sitting in the 80s, 80 RPM, sometimes even into the 70s, and I do a lot of standing. And if I'm want to attack or go a little harder, I actually do it standing. So despite that, it's worse efficiency. good. Seem to run pretty low heart rate nowadays in the 250, 260 range. If I do Ironman again, planning on 2020, that's sort of going to be my power zone. So of course, if I'm down in air position at 250 watts, it's a little more difficult than riding 250 watts sitting in a road position. But if you get used to your position, it should only affect a few heart rate beats per minute. Take my feather here, blow by these guys. Yeah, so at a higher cadence, I'm like mid 60s in pedal efficiency, 100 cadence or so, and around 80 cadence in the 80s, then I'm closer to 70. So I'll continue to do a lot of training in the higher cadence. Because if I'm more efficient even there, then I'm more efficient at a lower cadence. So, plus it's better for recovery when you're riding easy, less muscle. For recovering muscles. Less muscle work, a little more heart rate. But of course, in the longer the distance, then the lower heart rate I'll use, or lower heart rate, lower cadence. And then I get the better efficiency. So I think probably low 80s is my best cadence for Ironman. Whereas in a sprint or Olympic distance, it'll be more like mid 90s. Well, that's about all I got for you today. We've seen almost 2 laps of the Gotham Grind. It's actually, like I said, this is the Astoria 8, but it just has that little loop at the bottom, extra. So, yeah, if you're racing, good luck. Watch out for drag strip racing, because we're not there to ride with you. Just kidding. It'll be fun Wednesday. See you there. Have a nice day. Hey.